Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Hot Rod Bob. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Hot Rod Bob. Let's see if this is working. All right, just found out that, Facebook has made some changes, and my computer's no longer compatible with their camera system. So I can't use my computer to do Facebook any longer. Uh, I can do Facebook, but I can't do the morning gas. Good morning, everybody. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas, the morning edition. Cassie Nunez is always coming up with suggestions. So today, I'm going to listen to one of them. And what she said was, hey, what about the argument between muscle cars and JDM? Well, first off, you got to know what a JDM is. So for those of you who are not sure, that's a Japanese domestic market car. And they are, in some cases, performance vehicles. In some cases, they're economy vehicles. In many cases, they're desirable if you like Japanese cars, and frankly, I do. But then again, if it's got four wheels on it, I like it regardless of who manufactured it. Now, when it comes to competition, though, now you got to look at different things. Muscle cars. 60s muscle cars versus 60s import, or JDM. If you want to go straight and fast, American muscle cars. If you want to stop and you want to turn, now you got to look at the Japanese car. And why do I know that? As a fact, I raced them. Now, I had muscle cars, and I've had Japanese domestic market cars. Now, do I like the Japanese domestic market cars? Yes. I autocrossed a Datsun 510, a Datsun 1200. I ran against guys with 240Zs and a multitude of other cars. My Datsun 1200 was actually the most successful of the Japanese cars I ran back in the day. And my lap times were equivalent to, and sometimes quicker than, Corvettes. Why? Smaller car. Tighter courses, I was quicker. Bigger courses, straightaways, wider turns, now it wasn't so good. On a small, tight course, I could be very effective with a little Japanese car. Now, I ran a car with a 1400cc engine. It put out from the factory 75 horsepower. With a header, a little compression increase, better carburation, little jetting there, little distributor work. The car was quick, putting out maybe 90 to 100 horsepower, maybe a little bit more, but weighing in at just 1,600 pounds. It was a light car. Horsepower to weight ratio, on par with many muscle cars of the day. Now, could I go straight line as quick as a big muscle car? No, and I tried. I went to the drags with the car. As a matter of fact, I did set an ET record with it for M stock at ARHR, an AHRA national event or regional event. Who knows how long it lasted, because AHRA went out of business just a few weeks later. But when I autocrossed the car, when I drove that thing on a track that had curves, that's where the car was effective. Z28s at the time, no match. Corvettes at the time, no match. On tight courses. Now, we ran Lion Country Safari area, which is now become Irvine Meadows, I believe, but in a huge parking lot. One lap was nearly a mile long. On that track, depending on how tight those corners were, I was as effective and as fast in the speed zones, and they had a radar gun going, as some of the bigger cars. I definitely was blowing the doors off the Datsun 510s. Why? They had the same horsepower, but weighed 300-400 pounds more. That made a big difference. Now, they did have an independent rear suspension, which made them corner a little bit better. But they were bigger, they were heavier, they couldn't go into a corner as hard as I could, and they definitely couldn't come out as quick. Now, the other thing I did, I worked for Nissan Corporate at the time, and down the street from our offices was Shelby American's headquarters, their tire distributor store. BF Goodrich had just taken over the radial tire series from SCCA. They became the key sponsor. Everyone had to switch to BF Goodrich TA radials. They were lousy tires. But before that, the tire to use, and was the only one approved, was the Goodyear Wingfoot. Hi, Bob Klein. How are you? Good morning, Kathy. Is your young grandson there along with you? So I switched. I had all these Goodyears that Shelby was basically almost giving away. We paid like $20 a tire, which, at the time, they were almost $100 a piece. They were shaved and ready to go racing with. We took them, we put them on our cars, and a bunch of us drove them in the 510s and the 1200s. They would stick. Good morning, Raphael. How are you doing this morning? And Bobby Jackson. The car was impressive with that. Now, I tried regular race tires, slicks, gumballs, road racing slicks. The car was not heavy enough to get them hot enough to make them stick, and I was actually slower with the race tires than I was with the shaved radials. So I stuck with the shaved radials. A little bit better shock absorbers, a little bit better bushings on the sway bars, front and rear sway bars. And the car was quick. It was fun. Buddy of mine was we were on our way to an event. He was in a 510. I was in my little 1200, which had a 1400 engine in it. And we were driving up the street, and he started to pull away, downshifted into third. I downshifted into third too, and blew his doors off. That's the difference in weight. So when you compare a muscle car to an import or a JDM, any import, but a JDM, you've got to look at what the purpose of the car was. And the purpose of the little Datsun was stopping and turning and good gas mileage. I did get good gas mileage, a little over 30 miles per gallon. But it was light in weight, had excellent braking, and excellent handling. The American cars had excellent acceleration for that era. They didn't have as good a braking system. You got to remember, American cars did not get disc brakes as early as the imports did. Corvette, well, that was one of the downfalls of the Corvette in racing, is the drum brakes would go out in the middle of a race. They faded, they wore out, they weren't as effective. The American manufacturers were really slow in getting disc brakes on cars, and even at that point, some of them were marginal. Now, Mustang started getting them in the early 60s, or when they came out in the mid-60s. Corvette got them starting in 1964 or 5, I believe. Camaros, you didn't get disc brakes till almost the 70s, although it was an option. Big cars still had drum brakes. Roadrunner, drum brakes. Super B Dodges, drum brakes. Could they go fast? You bet. Would they turn? Yeah. Would they stop? Eventually. But that's where the JDM or the Japanese cars had the advantage. If you put a turn in the way. Straight away? Yeah, no way. Didn't happen. Now, today it's a whole different story. Because some of the JDM cars coming in, such as the Nissan GTRs, these are 7-second, 8th-mile cars right off the showroom floor without changing a thing to them. Yes, you can buy an American car that'll do the same thing, but they are few and far between. Dodge, Hellcats, Demons, Chevy ZL1 Camaros, Mustang, Shelbys, they'll do it. But again, there are very few cars that will. Now, will that Nissan outhandle those domestic cars? I think it's close at this point. However, what the Nissan has an advantage is all-wheel drive, whereas the domestics still have rear drive. I'm a proponent of rear drive. All-wheel drive is great. I like rear drive. I am not a fan of front-wheel drive cars. And if you look at the drag strips and see the acceleration rates of front-wheel drive Japanese cars, their first 60 feet are usually slower than a domestic car with rear-wheel drive or even another Japanese car with rear-wheel drive. But they make up for it in the long run, and they are very quick at the top end. The domestic cars, they got it all at the low end, and they'll keep pulling through the top end. Do I see a lot of Hondas and Toyotas at the drag strip keeping up with domestic cars? You bet. We got a guy, Mr. Santos. Man, this guy has got a 5-second Toyota Corolla in the 8th. As a matter of fact, it goes every which way in 5 seconds. We've got guys coming out with Nissan 240SXs, turboed, twin cam. Those things blast down the track. We've got Z cars coming out, built twin cam, 6 cylinders, turbos. The lightweight cars with lots of horsepower. Now, stock out of the box, good chance the American car is going to have more muscle. Can the JDM car keep up? They will, and they are. Now, what cars are your preference? Me? Like I said, 4 wheels on the ground, it's a car. It's great. I don't care where it's manufactured or who manufactures it. If it is a cool, interesting car, I like it. I'll go for it. I've had British, I've had Japanese, I've had American, I've had Italian, I've had French. I've had them all. Do I like them? You bet. There are quirks about every car on the road, whether it's domestic or imported. You've got to decide whether those quirks are worth your time and effort. And that's what I have done. I have owned Jaguars. Loved them in a straight line. I had older Jaguars, early 50s. They were trucks to drive. But for their time, they were excellent machines. They were very fast, very nimble for their time. And that's another thing you've got to look at when you're buying a car. Was it good when it was new? Now, it may be outdated now, and I'll give you another example. I have a 1989 Corvette. Not a high-dollar car. They were relatively high dollar when they came out in 1989. But today, it won't keep up with a Corvette that's 10 years newer. I have a 5th generation Corvette as well. I've got a 4th and a 5th generation. The 5th generation Corvette will run around the 4th generation. Hi, Paul Sanders, Denny Sanders, or Paul Summers, and Denny Sanders, and Alan. How are you doing this morning? Yeah, crazy little car. 3-cylinder turbo Sprint, which was a Suzuki. Phone trying to make some differences. Kathy Calderwood, Pete Muriello, and 17 other people are watching this right now. Okay, here we go. Raphael. He owns a 1966 Pontiac GTO. All original. Great car. Fun to drive. But those drum brakes, oh yeah, you're right. They go great straight. Don't turn. Don't try and stop. That is the downfall of that car. But the GTO was never made to turn. It was never really a concern to stop. You had plenty of distance at a drag strip, and that's what that car was designed for, drag strips. All right, so back to where I was. 4th generation Corvette. It's raw in comparison to a 5th generation. It is a world-class car compared to a 3rd generation Corvette. Progress and changes happen in the auto industry. Good morning, Mark. I'm going to be checking your messages in a little bit. All right, so progress. Was the car good for the years it was manufactured? Answer, in most cases, is yes. Do they get better with time? You bet. Now, I drove an 84 Corvette before they were introduced. I got to drive one of the pre-production cars. Amazing car for the time. It was so good, when I had the chance, I went out and bought my own, a 1985. I didn't get the 84 because the 84 had tune port fuel injection, or it didn't have tune port. It had 2 throttle bodies, 205 horsepower. Now, 205 horsepower today, that's a 4-cylinder. It was high horsepower for the time. It was an excellent handling car for the time. I bought an 85. It had the tune port injection, 240 horsepower, 35 horsepower more, a little bit softer suspension, was a better car. I have an 89 now. Better suspension still. Same engine as the 85. But they changed the transmission. I've got a 6-speed manual versus the Doug Nash 4-speed with double overdrives, or triple overdrives, which was a pain in the butt transmission. It took GM a long time to get rid of that transmission, and when they finally did, the Git-Trag 6-speed went in its place, and that's what I've got. Love driving my 4th generation Corvette. I know its limitations. It has 245 horsepower. Not much by today's standards. By 1989 standards, though, that was a good amount of horsepower. The car's fun. It's raw. I have a 2001, well, Peggy has a 2001 Corvette. We have 2 Corvettes. Daily Driver is the 2001. It has over 325 horsepower. It's an automatic transmission. It's an easier car to get into, an easier car to drive, and it's faster. Gets the same fuel mileage, though. Difference, LS versus Series V8 engine versus an LT. And I had an L98, actually, in my 89 Corvette. World of difference between the 2 cars. Is the 4th generation Corvette a bad car? No. It's just not as good as a 5th generation or 6th generation. And then the 7th generation's a jump ahead of that. So again, when you're comparing cars, not only compare the type of car, but compare what it was designed for. Compare the age of the car. What year was that car produced? Because that's the technology that you're going to find in a car. And technology changes from year to year. As a matter of fact, in Japan, they don't even put year models on the car. The car is based on production date. And when you're trying to find parts for a Japanese spec car, you have to know the production date to get the proper parts, because there are running changes. They don't have year models like we do here in the States. They have production changes, and that's what happens there. So what are you driving? Post a picture. Go ahead. Let's see what you got. You know what I've got. I got my 1948 Plymouth, the 56 Chevy, a 57 Ford, a 57 Ford, world-class car compared to a 56 Ford. 56 Chevy, world-class car compared to a 54. What are you going to do? For the times, your car was correct. Sure, there's compromises in every car. Cost compromises. Ride compromises. Got to remember, American market, people prefer a softer riding car. Our roads are crap. You got to have a softer riding car. The American driver expects a softer riding car. Drive a European car. Firmer, more precise handling, more direct steering, because that's what a European driver wants. Japanese, got a mixture of both. And fuel economy. That's their big thing. Lots of fuel economy. And you'll get better fuel economy out of most Japanese vehicles than you will out of a domestic car or a European car. Although the Europeans are really strict on fuel mileage as well. The Japanese cars tend to be a little bit better because you got to remember, Japan has very few of its own natural resources, and they've got to import steel, aluminum, and petroleum. Europe, well, they got their own oil fields, but they still get it from the Middle East as well as we do here in the U.S. So when you're comparing a car, apples to apples, and then look at what the car was designed for. At the time, 240Z, world-class sports car, 150 horsepower. How do you think that fared against the Corvette? 1969, Corvette would blow its doors off in a straight line. Z would keep up with it in a corner. Z would probably brake almost as well, if not as well. Got to remember, Corvette was a lot heavier, too. So compare your cars. Model to model, year to year, what was the car designed for? If you're going to compare an economy car to a muscle car, of course the muscle car is going to win if you were looking for power. Now, if you're looking to pass a gas station, the economy car wins. So what are you basing your likes and dislikes on? What are you basing your comparison on? What are you looking for? Raphael from Italy says, and also driving old models, always remember to set your habits and feelings on the car's age. You're right. You're absolutely right. And Raphael just posted a picture a little while ago for me of an 850 Fiat, little coupe. Cool little cars. Love those little cars. In the U.S., they couldn't get out of their own way. Hi, Jessica. Good morning to you. I'm going to try something with Jessica. We're adding you. Let's see if you come up on screen. No, we're trying something new. Feature that was on Facebook here, but it's not really working. Oh, well, Jess, I tried to get screen. Jay Black's here. It's not working, Jay. I'm not going to be able to bring you up either. Herb Peterson, how are you this morning? So when you're buying a car, comparing cars, remember, compare them to what you're looking for. What is going to be best suited to your driving style, your driving needs, and enjoy what you drive. Don't drive a car for the sake of just having a utilitarian piece of steel or plastic. Drive the car you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy the car, you're not going to take care of it. And if you don't take care of it, it's going to cost you more in the long run. Trust me. I drive cars I enjoy. I hope you do too. I'm Hot Rod Bob. You've got gas. And what I want you to do is, in a short while, I'm hoping soon, I'm going to get a link to the interviews this morning that we did in Spain. Yes, I was there doing interviews in Spain. Well, I wasn't in Spain, but you get the idea. Of Danny Thompson and Alan Grant. Danny Thompson, land speed record holder at 448 miles an hour. Alan Grant, part of the original Shelby Cobra teams, was one of the drivers in the Shelby Cobra coupes designed by Peter Brock. He gives us a whole lot of information about those days, including his opinion of the movie Ford versus Ferrari. And he's an insider. He knows the facts. I'll post the interviews a little bit later on once they get sent to me. They'll also be available on YouTube from Gentlemen Driving. So check it out. We'll talk to you guys later. You have a great day. I got to do some housework, I'm the house husband now. Take care, folks. We'll talk to you later. Enjoy those cars. And let us know what cruises you're going to this weekend. We'll get one going for you. Take care.